not every referee, but I think referees are worried about that one time that they, the count isn't correct as it should be, and it's something that's maybe a fear in the back of everyone's minds. But I was definitely having that, and when I look at the entrance ramp and I see Claudio Castagnoli walking down the ramp, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, I am not going to mess this up. And luckily, I haven't had any problems. But yeah, that was in May of 2009. Was my very first time in front of a crowd in a ring working. Wow. So I went from there to I refereed for another year, and I expressed to Ring of Honor management that I think that I would be better doing something different, and that's when I created my character, my manager character.
Nice. Do you think, like, in regards to your path, do you think that the training, like, ultimately helped you understand things about wrestling that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise, or see things different?
Yes. Yeah. I'm originally from Seattle, Washington, which doesn't get much wrestling, but WWE will still go there, maybe once or twice a year. But I lived most of my teenage life in my early 20s in a smaller town called Spokane, Washington, which is on the eastern side of Washington. And there is no wrestling there. There's zero wrestling. So no independents, no WWE. Wow. And if WWE comes, it's about once every 6 years or so. Wow. They'll have maybe a SmackDown there. Right. But it's a small town, and I kind of thought I knew what was going on with wrestling. And then when I had my first day of training at the Ring of Honor Academy, that's when a reality check came in, and I started learning a lot of stuff every single day. The small things that you don't really think about when you're just a fan watching it from afar.
That's true. So, do you think that as far as creating PWE, do you think that had, was that something in the back of your mind, like your training when you were putting together matches and kind of creating the concept?
I would say PWE didn't enter my mind until about 2 to 3 years ago. So during the training, I was actually so focused in on completing the task. So the task was, graduate from the school after you do 6 months, and then I continued to train after that. But the task was I was doing dark matches in Ring of Honor, so I wasn't ever on television, but I was practicing in front of a live crowd, and they were booking me on the dark matches, and I was doing the best I could, and the goal originally was to be filmed, be on television for Ring of Honor. So that was my main goal. I didn't even think of our PWE at all during that time. But yeah, that was the main goal, is to be at the level of maybe like a Prince. You've probably seen his Ring of Honor. Yep. So that was the original goal in my head. I said, you know what, I'm going to work as hard as I can. I'm going to do whatever I can, and I want to get to that level. I never got to that level, but that was my goal. So PWE never entered in during that time.
Okay, and with PWE, explain to people what is kind of the philosophy of it. I think every wrestling company has a different flavor or a different idea behind it. So what is kind of the philosophy, or what's your vision, or with PWE?
Okay, my vision is a variety show. So think of, I'm a big fan of carnivals. Okay. I'm a big fan of entertainment. I love amusement parks. So in fact, I was just in Universal Studios in Orlando just last week, and I love entertainment. I love variety. So basically, think of a carnival where you walk to your left and you've got a mime or a magician. You walk to your right and you've got like games, like throwing darts at balloons, like carny games. And that's kind of what I wanted to do with PWE, is I wanted to be a variety. I wanted heavyweights, lightweights, physical wrestlers, as in physical type of wrestling, but I also wanted comedy. I'm a fan of all types of wrestling. Right. So I know what they say. They say that when people will say, like, well, what do I do to start a company? The first thing they'll tell you is you need to have one thing and you need to go all in on that one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's say ECW said, well, we're going to be extreme. So they went all in on being extreme. But I guess I never listened to that because I kept thinking, I want a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So PWE is a variety show for a younger audience.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say I'm leaning more towards characters.
Mm-hmm.
Characters, fun wrestling, nobody getting hurt,
Mm-hmm.
and a good time for the younger crowd and maybe their parents. So that's what I'm gearing it towards, is a fun little environment, fun for the wrestlers and fun for the audience. So that's why I booked people like Kefka the Quiet.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he's doing a lot of stuff with CZW's Dojo Wars right now.
Yeah, he's their champion. He's the I think it's called the Medal of Valor, I believe it's what it's called.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I actually just met him for the first time about a month ago because I went to a Dojo Wars event, and he's a super nice guy, and just everything. That's what I'm gearing it towards. I'm gearing it towards characters. I want. Although in Ring of Honor I was exposed to a lot of, Kenta versus Davey Richards, Davey Richards versus Bryan Danielson,
right?
And this is stuff that I'm seeing for the first time because remember I'm from the West Coast and I didn't know who these guys were until I moved over here.
Wow.
And a lot of other people on the East Coast are so knowledgeable about their independent wrestling because you guys have so much here on the East Coast, and it's really easy. But for me, I wasn't exposed to any of this, so I saw that and I said, I'm thinking to myself, this is awesome. This is amazing. Kenta, Bryan Danielson, these guys are just awesome. But when I really thought about making my own company,
right.
I wasn't really leaning towards that type of wrestling. I was more leaning towards what I liked when I was 12, 13, and 14 years old, which is kind of that early 90s style where you have Papa Shango and you have Duke the Dumpster Drosy. That's more what I envision PWE to be. It's more of a variety show, so I still can have strong style and whatever, but I'm leaning more towards characterization, promos, storylines. So think a mixture of Jakara and a little bit of Ring of Honor as well in there.
Okay, very, very cool. You're talking my time period, because that's when I started watching wrestling, was 1992, so that early 90s period is definitely my time period. And I loved it. There were some really, there were things that I watch now, and I'm like, wow, like, I don't know if that would work now in WWE nowadays, but back then it was, like, great. Like, I was watching, like, the whole, it was 94, and I was watching the dueling Undertakers. Ted DiBiase Undertaker and Paul Bearer's Undertaker, and I thought, but it was pulled off so well. Like, Brian Lee was, like, a really good Undertaker. Like, you're watching it going, wow, this is really interesting. And I liked how what they did then, and they don't necessarily do now, is they spread storylines over shows. So, like, like, one thing would happen on Raw, but, like, Superstars would have something else. Like, Raw might have, like, the King's Court, and he might focus on, like, Owen Hart and the Anvil and Brett and that whole thing. But then, like, you'd see, like, the Ted DiBiase, like, stuff, like, Tatanka and Lex Luger was all happening on Superstars on the Heartbreak Hotel with Shawn Michaels. So they kind of spread it out amongst shows. So it was kind of this nice, like, there wasn't really, like, a B show at that point, because they were doing something different on each of these shows, Where your B shows would be, like, All-American, which were, like, recap type shows, things like that.
Yeah, and I was a big fan of Superstars for sure. And
Superstars was good back then.
It was really good, and it really made you want to buy the pay-per-views. I think more so Superstars than Raw, because let's go into 93. Well, they still had Superstars, but what was happening on that show is you had your favorites like Goldust, Razor Ramon, but they were facing guys that you've never seen before. Like, you would have a guy, Tom Smith, and they would, and Razor Ramon would go over on Tom Smith.
Right.
And and I was always thinking, who's Tom Smith? And each time I watched Superstars, it'd be different guys. But that really pumped you up to get the pay-per-view because you were this is what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I see Razor Ramon beating up these guys, but I want to see if Razor Ramon can beat up Goldust, because I just saw Goldust, win convincingly, and then I just saw Goldust win. I saw Razor Ramon win convincingly.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if Razor Ramon faces Goldust?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I got SummerSlam, because then the entire card was the main roster versus each other, but Superstars was more of them going over on brand new guys that they would constantly bring in.
Yeah,
So,
Raw had some of that, and it's kind of interesting who was on Raw. Like, it's weird now if you watch it again. Like, I have the network, and it's like, I watch it, and I'm like, one day, like, Matt Hardy was on there, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Wait, and then I heard him say something, I was like, yes, that is Matt Hardy. Oh my god, this is 94. What? It blew my mind to, like, watch that, to know that's Matt Hardy on 94,
Yeah.
Raw, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So it was kind of, and I think his match was like against like a returning Nikolai Volkov of all things. So
Gotcha.
it was kind of like mind blowing a little bit. It's like, whoa. But I think what you're talking about, I think is a really good point, is that there was really a lot of story development and character kind of development.
Yes.
In addition, you got that buildup of the wrestler themselves, like them in the ring, along with the storytelling, along with the storylines and the promos and all that. It was that in-ring work.
Exactly. Superstars, they focused in on storylines, character build.
Mm-hmm.
So you had those vignettes. Like, let's use Razor Ramon's a famous one, as in everyone knows his vignettes, or how he was walking around saying Chico and driving through the Miami streets.
Mm-hmm.
And the Superstars really, really, really focused in on building character, building their promos and everything, and then you would get the match, and it'd be a three-minute match. Right. But it left you wondering, can he hang with the rest of the roster, like with guys like Bret Hart?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the pay-per-views came in. But that's kind of what I'm envisioning for PWE, is more of character build, and storyline, versus more so than like, okay, here's two guys that are super talented and super athletic, and they're just going to face each other in a 10-minute match with, tons of athleticism. I'm more of a fan of characters and characterization. So that's kind of why, you can kind of imagine why I like Jakara so much. They are very good at doing that.
Absolutely. That's one of their things that they're known for.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I did, when I was looking at the card, there were a number of names that I recognized from Jakara. And I want to talk a little bit about the card. I want to go through the card and talk about that. And one match that kind of stood out to me when I first saw it, just because it's such a meeting of opposites, is Juan Francisco de Coronado, who is from Jakara, and he just made his Ring of Honor debut, a matter of fact, like maybe a week or two ago.
I heard about that.
Yeah, and which is amazing. He's a very talented guy, very well-deserved debut. And he's taking on Jeff Cannonball, another really talented guy. But he's definitely, like you were saying, a heavyweight, super heavyweight. He's definitely in that class.
Yes, not only is Jeff Cannonball good, he's a very, very nice guy. Got to meet him at Dojo Wars as well. Mm-hmm. And yes, super, super good guy. If you probably talked to him before, he's a super nice guy. And their styles. I was thinking, I was wondering that same thing. I wanted to. That's actually the opening match on the card. That's the very first match, and I wanted a guy. I wanted a bad guy, and I've seen Juan in Jakara when he brings out the flag and everything, and takes an extra long time to come to the ring.
I was gonna say, maybe you shouldn't have put him first, because he might take up the first hour with his entrance alone. I've seen his entrance many times. I've taken naps during his entrances many times.
I imagined. I was thinking, well, with PWE, who do I want to be the first person to walk to the ring? And I can't think of anybody better that was available than him. I like what he does. I like everything about him as a character and his in-ring ability. So I figured him, the flag, first guy out, that's going to kind of set the tone. And for Jeff Cannonball, he's going to give Juan a totally different match than what he's probably used to, at least in Jakara, because Cannonball is he's a big guy, he's a tough guy too, and it's going to be different. So that's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted a clash of styles,